Okay, we are live. Hello, everybody. Hope you're having a good
Hello.
Sunday. We'll just give it a couple of minutes for everyone to join in. Please tell us how are you today, where you are joining us from, how's it been this week.
Did
Hope
you attend
everyone
the
is doing.
AGM?
Yeah, did you attend the AGM, the PDTE annual conference?
So yeah, today's talk is going to be about the yearly conference of the pet dog trainers of Europe. And it's not just for people who attended, it's also for people who didn't, so that you can reconsider and maybe next time you'll join us. No, not just because of that, because it was really interesting and we wanted to have a little chat about it in a very relaxed fashion, as we do.
Yeah.
So we would like you to tell us, did you attend the conference this year or maybe in previous years, or maybe you plan on attending? That would be nice to know.
Yeah, for people who don't know, Pet Dog Trainers of Europe is an organization for dog trainers. It's now not only European based, we have members from all over the globe, from US and Canada and India, even many people there. And yeah, we have this annual conference where we share the knowledge. We have members presenting and also world experts presenting. It's always fascinating and always the latest knowledge in the dog world. So we make sure everyone is learning and going forward to benefit
And
our
maybe,
dogs.
yeah, and maybe people that have seen some of the presentations will have their own best bits, and they want to share them with us, and we can talk about that as well. I don't know
Yeah.
if anybody
And
go for it on comments.
And since you guys aren't saying anything, hello Jenny.
Hi, Jenny.
We actually have
Oh,
we actually have two of the speakers here. So if you guys want to ask Luba and Letty anything about their talks at the PDTE conference, this is a great opportunity. They had actually, we're going to start with Luba's talk, and Letty was on day 2, I think.
yeah, I was.
But I think before we do, it would be nice to just introduce ourselves a little bit, since hopefully, maybe someone who is watching doesn't know us very well yet, and this is all new to you. So we are the Smiling Leash team, and our project, the Smiling Leash project, is dedicated to changing our perception of a walk with a dog. We want to show the world a way of walking that is good for both dogs and humans. So on our Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, and on our website, you can find photos and videos of people having relaxing walks with their dogs on a long, loose, and smiling leash. Along with that, you can also find some interesting information and useful tips about dogs, their behavior, and well-being. So we are very happy to have you here with us today to talk about the Pet Dog Trainers of Europe conference. And I don't know, girls, I suggest we start with the first talk.
Yeah.
We're going to go chronologically, so as the talks happened. And the first talk was by our very own Luba. The sit study. Why do dogs sit, and why do we still make them do it?
Yeah, so it's a very, I will give just a brief summary to people and then you guys can chip in. So for this study was a long-lasting project inspired by Turi Drugos herself during our education at ADTE with her in Spain. And, she's been talking about the sit command for many years with her students and her clients. Making us think, do we really need to make our dogs sit? Is it practical, and what does it do to them? So how does it feel? And from dogs' perspective, which is I think essential nowadays, to think like how does it feel from dogs' perspective to build a good relationship with them and really dig deep into the any potential problems that they have. We need to take their perspective. So this SID study was looking at this, and we were collecting the data from dog trainers and dog owners worldwide on how their dogs were sitting. So we asked them to just observe their dogs throughout the day and take notes, so for how much time and on which occasions their dogs were sitting. Then we analyzed this data to understand how much of those sits were the ones that dogs chose to do naturally without any command, and what were the sits that dogs learned and were doing because they were asked to. And we were also, we were also looking at the impact, the psychological impact of the command sit, and the physical as well. There is a lot that goes into that, but I think main points is that people often don't realize that making the dog sit how they feel inside. So, for example, a dog that's sitting in front of the road cross, there are so many things going around, like people, unfamiliar people in close proximity, and moving traffic, just so many sounds, and dog is already feeling uncomfortable, and then making her sit in that moment doesn't feel safe for the dog. And the same goes into physical impact. So it is a lot of work. There is a lot of muscles and that go into sit and stand, and especially if we consider also the type of ground, often it's slippery floor. So this repetitive movement, what does it do to bodies of our dogs, especially young puppies that are not ready for repetitive exercises, and older dogs that have maybe already some discomfort. So these were the main talking points of mine, and then we looked at the study itself. So I'll just briefly walk you through the figures there. I think it's interesting also for people to know. Obviously, if you want to know more, you can email me or message me here in the Smile English. I'll be happy to give more information. But we had overall 43 dogs and 81 days of observation there to work with. So the data that we analyzed, we then found out that dogs in average were sitting for about 8 minutes a day and about 12 times a day. And out of those, 35% were sits that were asked of the dogs, or were learned sits, so not natural. So if we go only with natural sit, dogs would sit 8 times a day instead of 12. And if we look at how dogs chose to sit by age group, we see that all the dogs chose to sit way less and for less time. And the same dogs that had mobility issues chose to sit less and for less time. So our conclusion is really it must feel uncomfortable for them, so we shouldn't ask them to sit on command. Of course, if they choose to do it naturally, it's okay. But yeah, these were the conclusions of our study. I love doing it. So, girls, what do you think? Do you have any questions or comments?
I think it's great because I have a young dog that sits a lot. Rufus. He goes out there in the garden and he just likes to observe, but he does it because he likes to. And then I have 2 older dogs that really are barely sitting anymore. So it shows that the numbers are there. And the other thing that for me is really important about this study and everything that we are doing in the PDTE about sitting is that I see a lot of people talking about this now, and I think it's just gaining momentum and having a little bit of evidence. Maybe it's not a scientific study, but maybe somebody will do one once. Is great because people can start seeing the numbers and see that it's really something that the dog wouldn't do out of their own accord. So I really enjoyed it. Really good.
Yeah, I remember sitting there.
My dogs are in there. My dogs are
in the yes.
I remember sitting there thinking, I'm so happy that Luba is sharing this information with the world, just exactly because of what you just said, Letty. This sit especially is something that people ask of their dogs without really thinking about it. And probably we've all done it at some point. It's just something you do. It's really, really easy to teach a dog to sit. And that's usually one of the first things people teach their dogs, even if they don't go to any kind of dog classes. And so they're doing it with puppies. And as we mentioned before, puppies are really, really not prepared for sits that are asked of them. Their bones are not ready, their muscle, their joints and everything. And that's what we ask them to do. And we do it a lot. We do it too much for their bodies.
Yeah.
And again, I was so happy that you mentioned also the psychological impact, because being asked to sit can sometimes make a dog feel quite vulnerable, I think. As you said, waiting for the traffic light to turn green in a busy environment, or something that we see a lot is when another dog is passing by, people are asking their dog to sit. And that's a very vulnerable position to be in. And also this is a position that kind of stops them from being able to communicate, because they communicate mainly through body language. So we're not doing them any favors with asking them to sit, especially not in such situations. And it's great that we're starting to talk about these things.
Yeah. And it's also like
sitting is part. Sorry,
Sorry, go.
I was going to say that sitting is part of their language. It's something that they would do in certain situations, and we are making it, artificial. It's not. They wouldn't choose to sit, and we are making them sit. So, what is that impact?
We're taking
psychologically for them.
We're taking their language away from them in a way, yeah. So we're
and it's not necessary, we can just ask them to wait by standing or by showing them a hand signal, just asking them to politely wait, even the traffic light, or if there is another dog, help them out and curve together with them. There is just no need to make it particularly sit. It doesn't mean that, we don't have to help out or our dogs sometimes, or just ask them to wait a little bit. Of course we need to sometimes, but we can do it in a much gentler way that doesn't make them do this repetitive sit stand. Yeah.
No, it was really a good talk, and I think it was very useful to people, because you opened up this conversation, and it has to be opened up again and again, about something that they maybe didn't think about before, which is awesome. And then if you're okay with it, oh, look, we have a comment.
I'm reading. Evie. Hi, Evie. Yeah.
Okay, do you want me to really read it out?
Yeah, sure.
It says, Lyubov, I watched your video twice the next days. It is really interesting to see that when we stop asking dogs to sit, they actually feel relief and stop doing it. Here in Greece, sit is the first thing people train, not just in Greece.
Yeah.
And when the dogs see it's not necessary to sit before going out, taking a treat, etc., they stop sitting. I have stopped asking dogs to sit around 3 years ago when reading Turid's article about it, and it is really cool. The same is for lying down command. Thank you. Evie, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, that's it. We all stopped asking our dogs to sit at some point in the past, all three of us probably. And I haven't missed it since. I never needed. I can't remember. Only, one time at the vet asked my dog to sit, and we were both like, I don't know. I don't know if this is going to happen. But he didn't need to sit at that point. Not really. It's just something that everybody's so used to asking of dogs,
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for your comment.
Great comment. Are you ready to move on to the next talk? The next talk was by Christina and Aurélien Budzinski. It was on how can we help a dog relax and enjoy the walk in a difficult environment. Again, something that is so useful, something that we are in contact with every day, and it's really nice to have more information about this. So there's a lot that I have a lot of notes. I'm looking at my notes. I'm sorry, people. I there's no way I could remember everything without my notes. So I just wanted to mention one thing that was I found it wonderful about this talk. Also, although there were many very good points there, and then I will stop talking for a while. I promise. I just wanted to mention the term fake freedom that they used in the very beginning. And we were talking about how much freedom we offer our dogs, and it really depends on the situation. Um, so you can't just always let your dog go and do whatever your dog wants to do, because we live in a society and there's traffic and there's other people and other dogs and so on, and that's a fact. So there's some kind of interval between no freedom at all and all of the freedom possible, and we are all somewhere on this interval. But there is also such a thing as fake freedom, which means that yes, you have let your dog off leash, but your dog is absolutely under your command. So heeling, sitting, whatever you're asking your dog to do on the walk, your dog doesn't have any real freedom. It just looks like freedom. And they called this fake freedom. And I think that's absolutely a great way of naming this state. And they also said something along the lines that if you think this is necessary, then maybe using a long leash and a harness is a better option. And I absolutely agree. There are places where I won't let my dog off leash for safety reasons, either because he can't handle the environment or because no dog could handle the environment. So he's on leash there, but he's on a long leash, and I adapt my walk to him. So I'm stopping with him, I'm slowing down with him. I go the other way if he wants to go the other way, and that's much better than if he was off leash but under command all the time. So yeah, fake freedom is real. It's a thing, and it's something to think about. I really love this term. But yeah, this was the point that I wanted to make right away, because it was also in the very beginning of the talk. But then they went on to talk about a difficult walk and how we can change it to make it less difficult for the dog.
That one was very nice. I like that they included a lot of videos. So they had a case of a dog that was, walking in the neighborhood. There was no possibility, unfortunately, to change the place of the walk. So they're walking in the neighborhood with other dogs barking from the fences, and that made the dog very upset. And she was also barking back at them, and it was difficult for the handler, for the dog carer to walk with this dog. It was becoming a difficult situation. So I love that they showed, just through a few days, making very simple changes, there was such a drastic difference. And the changes were comfortable harness, a longer leash, slower pace, curving around the difficult places. So just making a curve where the other dogs were barking and allowing the dog to sniff. So finding some spots where the dog could slow down, sniff, relax, and therefore handle those stressful situations much better. I absolutely loved it.
Yeah, and actually,
Yeah, it was great.
The Budzinskis, being the Budzinskis, they measured the pulse of the dog
Yeah.
while filming what was going on. So we get a reading of the pulse, and it's very interesting things start happening when you make these simple changes. You can actually see the impact on the dog's body, not just behavior, but the pulse.
And also they did this. Sorry,
Yes?
Anna. No, they did this on their holidays. It was 1 week.
Yeah, really short amount of time. And it's true that a lot of times dogs need more time to make a change. It doesn't always happen in a week, but it does happen. A lot can be done with very simple changes, like a longer leash and stopping when your dog stops and things like that. But yeah, one of the things they mentioned was heart rate variability. So when the heart rate went up, did it then go down or did it stay up? And there's a lot of difference between one and the other. So as the dog was getting better, the heart rate variability was getting better. So the dog was calming down in between, even if there were stressful events, the dog got the chance to kind of calm down between them. And that's an important point.
Yeah, that's resilience.
And of course,
that's-
yeah. And of course, all the things that they were explaining is the same stuff that we studied with Turret, to make the dog walk easier for the dog and for us as well, of course, because if the dog is better, we are better too, because we can see them enjoying the walk. But it's also very close to what we do in Smiling Leash, right?
Yeah.
So we have lots of articles about how to do these things and on the website and on Facebook and Instagram. So I thought it was like really, I felt really happy about watching this talk. It was just very yes. And hello, Raiden.
Hello, Raiden. It's good confirmation that we're on the right track, and you can't have too much of those, I think. But it's really simple. Just by making the leash longer, the harness more comfortable. A simple tip like do not yell at the dog, things like that. And if you notice, none of this is training. None of this is teaching the dog to do a behavior, for example, on cue. This is all things that we as handlers, as carers can change, and the dog's behavior will follow, which is awesome. Hi, Suchi. Hello. We have people from all over the world. So if you have people have any comments on these talks, or maybe if you want to share what your favorite part of the conference was, do put in a comment. Or if you have any questions, we're happy to answer any questions as we go along. And the next talk, which made me reach for my Kleenex at the end, was by Alexandra Horowitz, Our Dogs Ourselves. Alexandra Horowitz is a professor at Barnard College, and she's famous for a few different things, but I think I know her mostly as someone who is an expert on olfaction, so the dog's sense of smell and what it can do, but also cognition. And it was interesting because the title was so open, Our Dogs Ourselves. I didn't really know what to expect. What did you guys think or expect from this talk?
I was expecting some dog nose stuff, for her to talk about the sense of smell and how. But I wasn't prepared for the second part of the talk. That's the one that impressed me the most, to be honest, because it made me see her as a person rather than as a scientist. You know what I mean? It was lovely.
Very personal, She was talking about the fact that how society nowadays looks at the dog, and it's often as property. So let's say if two people separate, dogs don't have any choice where to go. And often, if your dog dies, people will tell you, oh, just get another one, like if it was a piece of furniture. And the laws do not consider animal choice. It's just starting to get better in some countries where dogs are recognized as sentient beings and all other animals, but nothing further. And it was very touching and really made us think about this.
I remember Anna saying that we should make her an honorary member of the PDTE.
Well, that's really not my choice, but yeah.
Oh, I know, but we were impressed. We really were.
I think we were all impressed. I was also impressed by the science and the experiments that she talked about before. A lot of things about how the dog's nose and olfaction. But olfaction is not just about the nose, it's also about the brain, of course, how it works and how amazing they are at it. For example, they have a 7 hertz sniff rate. And when dogs sniff, I like the fact that she explained how they have this nostril air jet. So when they're sniffing, they're moving air and they stir up molecules on the ground to get more scent from the ground, which is, yeah, you can see it sometimes if the surface is right, and it's really amazing how they were really made to sniff and born to sniff. And that's why we always say we should let them do it for as long as they want to. Just stop and wait and let your dog sniff, because it's so important to them and they're so good at it.
Yeah, and honestly, if you want to learn more, I think it's Alexandra Horowitz has wonderful books, and on YouTube you can find some great videos by her. So definitely go check them out. It will. It's really great. And also, what I liked a lot about her talk is that she showed how science is now starting to think from point of view of animals, and now recognizing that, you know, as people, we cannot always comprehend the whole picture that animals are getting. For example, dogs and their amazing noses, we can not comprehend how the world feels from their perspective. So changing some experiments to make it more from the dog point of view, from the animal point of view, is really great. And, you know, we're happy to see that happening in science too, because we've been, you know, obviously educated by Turet, who's been talking about this for many years. So we are just happy to see this happening in science too.
Yeah,
I think you're about self. Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
something about self-recognition.
Yeah, the olfactory mirror. And the thing is,
which changed, so it was a smell rather than a vision. That was brilliant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and looking at it now that they've done it, it makes perfect sense. Of course, humans, we are visual, and probably I'm not sure, but probably some apes are as well. So it would make sense that if they wanted to test whether some being who is visual is aware of self, they would use vision. But for dogs, it makes more sense to use smell, because it's probably their primary sense. Yeah. So for a human, for example, a baby, you would test so that you would put something on the baby's face, and you would have the baby look in a mirror, and if the baby reaches for this thing, this alteration, this visual thing that the baby can see, then we know that, the baby knows that she's looking at herself. This is a very simplified way of explaining it, because I'm not a scientist, but they did the same kind of thing with smell for dogs. So they had the dog's own urine, and they added a smell to it, and they observed how dogs reacted, and they did indeed find that they had a different reaction to their own smell of their own urine with that added marker in there. So this kind of goes to show that they are self-aware, which is not exactly news to most dog owners and carriers, but it's great to have confirmation, and it's really important to have confirmation on things like that.
Yeah.
So I like the part about reactive dogs and anxious dogs. They had this experiment that showed that nose work makes dogs more optimistic about life in general. And after doing nose work for a short while, actually, was it a week or two, something like that, reactive dogs vocalized less, so they barked and growled and so on less, and they were calmer. And anxious dogs were shown to be calmer and spent less time looking at objects that might worry them. So it showed that nose work is not only fun, it really plays an important part in helping our dogs overcome their issues. So, and yeah, we see that in our dogs, in our clients' dogs all the time, how helpful nose work can be in making them feel better about themselves and about life in general.
Yeah, totally. And it was some simple nose work exercises, you know, not something extremely difficult like we would think, airport dogs that are finding drugs. No, nothing like that. Something very simple, looking for treats and so on. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's move on to the next talk. So here, actually, our colleague Martina Nasharatska from Czech Republic, she's a veterinarian. She was talking about blood pressure in dogs. And you actually, we had Martina on our page on one of the lives, so we invite you to go back and watch it. So this was very eye-opening for me because we know about importance of tracking blood pressure in humans and the effect, right, it has, but we just don't think about blood pressure in dogs very often. So it was great to get a perspective from veterinarian on it. It was a lot of medical details and worrying sometimes because I just started to think, like, is everything fine with my dog? But yeah, it was just great to get that information and be able to then use it with during veterinarian visits with my own dogs.
Mm-hmm.
It was also nice, the history of how it was measured, from the beginning to how we are doing it now. And of course, Martina, if anybody wants to watch our talk with her, handles the situations with dogs and with clients in her own clinic in a very caring way, because she knows how to approach dogs, she knows how to sit with them, and I'm sure that has an effect on how the blood pressure is measured. It's not going to be the same at Martina's clinic that and maybe some other clinic.
How
Don't
did
you
she
think?
call it? She called it white coat syndrome because in some cases blood pressure is different just because of the situation that the animal is in, or maybe the human as well. I think it's the same for humans sometimes.
Stress.
Yeah, but it can also be that an animal has high blood pressure for a number of different reasons. And I think the important thing to remember is that sometimes there can be various symptoms, but sometimes there are no symptoms. So your dog could be having a problem and you wouldn't really know about it unless the vet measured your dog's blood pressure. And I think if I understood correctly, we also can't do this at home. That has to
we
be
cannot.
done by
We
by
can
a
only do it at the
professional.
vet.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
All right.
So that's it.
You want
All
to
of
move
us
on?
going to measure them. Yeah.
Next
Yeah.
time we can ask our vets to measure. Yeah.
I just want to say that it's lovely to see Martina because, we studied with her and we are good friends, and I always like seeing her. She's really nice person and great speaker.
Yeah,
Definitely.
absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
So
Go.
So we can go on. The next speaker was Linda Rugas, and the talk was Knowledge, the Power, and the Pain. And this one was, I was sitting there thinking, this sounds familiar. And
Yeah,
probably
we've all been through it.
Yeah, it probably sounds familiar to a lot of people who have started learning about dogs and about dogs the way we had the chance to learn about them. So in a way that makes some preconceptions show up as false. For example, the sit, as we talked about before, and many other things that people think, but actually when you dive a little bit deeper, you realize that things are not the way they might seem. And Linda talked about how knowledge is important, how it needs to be shared, and how it's, in a way, it's power, but it can also be painful because you're walking around knowing what's good for dogs and also knowing what's bad for dogs. And then you're watching puppies being dragged on collars, being walked way too much, dogs being punished, things like that. And we've all been there. I think there's this point in time when you're learning, when you look around and everything you see is horrible, and it's really difficult for a while.
I think it's not only what you see. For me personally, my dog career started in a very different kind of setting, and a lot of reward-based training, and it is not what I do now, right? After studying with Turit, etc. So I also think about the things that I did in the past. That also is a pain,
Yeah.
knowing that you did all those things and you didn't really need to do any of that. In fact, it was probably a bad idea. So yes, I completely agree with Linda in this.
Mm-hmm. No, it is. Of course, there's guilt in there because I've made mistakes with my dogs. I make mistakes still, but they're different now. But it's something that I was sitting with all of this guilt and looking around, and everything was horrible for a while. And then I realized that none of this is helping anyone. And this was, in a way, my way out. Okay, I have some knowledge now that I didn't have before. I hope my dogs that are not there with us anymore forgive me, but usually dogs do because they're just better than us. There's nothing I can
Yes,
do about things that are in the past, and there's nothing I'm
absolutely.
doing right now just by looking at that dog being dragged around on the street and, just complaining to myself and being in a bad mood. That's not helping the dog, that's not helping the human, it's not helping myself either. So I started to try to put my energy somewhere where it could be helpful, and then that made it easier for me to see, because you do see
Uh,
some
yeah,
sad sights
that's great.
on the street,
Yeah. And I think also all the work that we do in Smile English as well is about showing what we need to do and not showing any of these, forget about that. This is what it needs to look like,
Mhm.
the pictures, the videos, and I think we should absolutely focus on that, the right thing, and move on. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
Totally.
when I was starting to learn these things, we had this beautiful, wonderful dog. His name was Darth Vader. He was a rough collie, and he was the sweetest dog. And of course, we were doing some things that I would never do now because we didn't know any better. We did what people said on TV. We did what other people did. And as I was learning about this approach, I was changing how I treated my own dog. And for every single thing that I changed to the better, he would just, he would just accept it and just get better, It was amazing to see. It doesn't always happen this quickly. It did with Vader because he was awesome. But you could just see that the more I learned, the better his life became. And I'm sorry that he didn't have that life since he was a puppy. He was already a mature dog when I started learning. But at least he had a very good life near the end. So just the change that you see is something to focus on, not what you were doing before, in my case.
Yeah,
So keep learning is the message.
and as Amber says, the quality of our efforts is the quality of their lives. I really like this. It is true, and I think every mistake is just a chance to learn and get better and move on, as Leti says. So yeah.
It's really important to move on. Let's maybe move on as well to the
Move
next
on
talk.
to the next talk. Yeah.
Julia Robertson, physical exercise for adolescent dogs.
Yeah, that was another like big central talk, I think, of the conference. Amazing, Julia Robertson from Galen, and she was really talking about some practical ways of how to make sure that your dog has healthy movement, and was informing us of some dangers that might be there, such as slippery floors and stairs. So yeah, I really enjoyed this talk, and I really what stuck to me is we might see them as athletes. They are jumping so high and running so fast, but they're still growing, and while they're adolescent and puppies, they're still fragile, their bodies. We have to take care of them and make sure they move in a healthy, functional way, not over exercise them. Even if they look that they can do it, it doesn't mean that they need to run a lot and jump up and do this all force exercises.
Yeah, it's because
It's
they're
always
adolescents are dummies in a way. She said it in a much nicer way because she said an adolescent often takes on physical challenges without a thought or experience.
Yeah.
In other words, they just go for it because yay, and actually it's not always good for them that they do.
Yeah.
well, I'm actually doing the Amber course now on adolescents, and she explains this about them. That they need to explore. Is the time of trying things and just go for it, as you say. I like watching Julia. That I studied with her, and she always her talks are really nice, and she explains things so well, and they are so nice. Yeah, I
Yeah.
really enjoyed it.
And it again hit me that, about the slippery floors. She really gave information how it impacts the dog movement, how drastic the effects are. And I started to again reiterate this with my clients even more. Now we don't have any slippery floors at home. It's not going to do any good for our dogs. And, about the stairs and just the health of movement, really, I started to talk much more about it with my own clients now.
Yeah, it's probably one of the best things you can do for your dog in the long run is to provide good traction since puppyhood and all their life.
Yeah, and we don't
Yeah.
appreciate how little trauma, just them falling down and just getting some problem with muscle. We might say, oh, like it will pass tomorrow, but if we don't let it heal properly, it will have an impact in the long term on the mobility. So it's really
And for
interesting.
older dogs, so important.
Yeah.
Older dogs have mobility issues, and if you add a little bit more traction to the flooring, then they're gonna be so much more comfortable and safe as well.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
definitely.
great talk. And if you want to learn more about Julia and this kind of information, you can go on the Galen website. So they have a lot of articles. They also have distance support program. So really lots of information there.
Right.
All right, let's go to the next one.
So we had Kim Brophy, ethological contributions to behavior problems in dogs, and behavior problems is in parentheses, which is great. I loved this talk because it took us up a level and asked us to look at the big picture of what's happening to dogs today. And this is something you guys know that I sometimes say that the modern pet dog is having a crisis of identity. And this is what I was clumsily trying to say. And of course, a scientist and expert such as Kim Brophy said it eloquently and with all the right models in place. But this is what she was talking about essentially and very simply.
Yeah.
We are seeing so many behavioral problems today. Why is that? What's going on with our dogs? And the reason why we're seeing all of this is because we're asking the wrong questions, basically. What she was saying is the modern world is changing so quickly that it's impossible for dogs to adapt. It's even difficult for us to adapt to the world we're creating because it's changing so quickly. And not only that, our intervention into their lives has prevented them to adapt to this new world. So what we've been doing is we've been disrupting nature. Nature has a system of checks and balances that produces an animal that can cope well with the environment, that is functional. So if you start adapting this process, if you move in and you say, no, I want this dog for this type of task and that dog for that type of task, what you do is you breed extremes. So a dog that is extremely likely to guard, a dog that is very fast and that reacts to every movement, like for example, a collie, to do the job that you want the dog to do. So we've bred these dogs that went past what is natural into some kind of extreme behavior tendency. And then we changed our own lives, and we no longer live on farms, most of us, and we no longer need them to do these tasks because most of us don't. And now we are taking this collie or this guarding dog or this hunting dog, and we want them to be pets. And then they exhibit behaviors that are completely bred into them, and we don't like that, and we want to train it away. So we've created dogs for jobs that we don't want them to do anymore, and now we are trying to train this away. And I think that's completely true, and it's a conversation that needs to start happening in the dog world.
Yeah, and I really love how she is saying it's not only about training, it's also about the whole dog. So she has this legs model, which is learning, environment, genetics, and self. So it's not only about how we get the puppy and we train this puppy to be the dog that we want, that we envision. It's actually about the whole puppy's heritage. It's about personality. It's about experiences, outside of your training. It's so much more, and I really love that we are now starting to have this conversation on such a wide level. So Kim is doing a lot of job to start this conversation. So if you haven't seen her, for example, Beyond the Operant series on YouTube, series of talks, it's brilliant. So definitely a recommendation to check it out.
Yeah, it was a very, very important talk, and not the only one.
I think some of it we've already heard from Turid, don't you think?
Yeah.
Here in Europe, and maybe we have been talking about this more for a long time.
I agree. It's some of these things we absolutely heard from Turid Rugas when we were learning from her, and from some other people as well. Anne Lil Kwam comes to my mind, for example. She mentioned, for example, the point about captivity. I won't go too deeply into domestication as a process, and what domestication is not the same as captivity. That's important. And our dogs are not only domesticated, which they are as a species, they're also living in captivity. It's something that is important to be aware of. And captivity, actually, the way that it was explained was that it's about control, how we control the environment of the animal and also the reproduction of the animal. This is where we start to take nature's place in a way.
Yeah.
So it was this was important to discuss. Really important.
Here's a very nice comment from Evie, and I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing the name wrongly, but I'll just read it out as I really liked it. Evie saying, and it's also the expectations the world has for dog handlers to be perfect and have the perfect dog, and this puts a heavy burden. And Kim Brophy helps to relieve this pressure from people also. Definitely 100% agree.
Yeah, Kim Brophy and other people as well. I'll never forget how Turid told us that the first thing you have to do is stop caring what other people think about you and your dog. This is step one, and it really is. Yeah, Evie, especially for people mostly rescuing dogs and working to help for their welfare. I agree, but not just in the case of rescue. In any case, dogs are being put in a situation that, as we said, it's impossible for them to cope with everything we throw at them. It's a little it's unfair of us to ask them to cope with everything. We've made them one way, and now we want them to behave a different way in a world that's changing too fast. So yes, I think it's important for all of us to stop judging a little. Yeah. When we see a dog not coping with the environment and barking at something, sometimes I want.
And a person gets really worried.
Yeah.
Oh, I had a brilliant situation yesterday. Sorry, you say.
Yeah, go.
No, I just had a brilliant situation yesterday where we were out, where we just met Compassion, and it was just so nice. Where my dog is a pretty big one, and she was, when she is, is afraid of something, her first reaction is to really bark and lunge, and it looks scary, but like with Compassion, we understand that it's fear and it's not pleasant for the dog to feel this way. So yesterday we met this cat that was just lying there, and we couldn't move in one direction because of there were children playing in another direction. We couldn't move because of the cat, and just some people came in, just took the cat very gently on their arms and moved away for my dog to pass. It was amazing. And yeah, I think that we should really realize that, the dog is just not coping. So what can we do to help the dog, not shut down the dog or make her sit or just, something? What can we do to help feel better?
And sometimes the best thing we can do is just leave the dog alone. If you're somewhere, for example, if I'm walking in the city, people probably think I'm afraid of dogs. I'm not. I just curve around them because it's polite, and I try not to get in their face, and I don't stare at them, and I try to behave politely in a way that's polite for dogs. So that's usually it. For example, I know that people mean well, but if a dog is barking at you, it's better not to talk to the dog in that moment. Usually they're saying things like, "Oh, you're such a good dog. You don't have to bark at me, blah, 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 blah." It would be more helpful to the dog if you just kind of ignore the dog in that moment. Yeah, because she's already not coping. And you talking is actually probably making the situation worse. And I know people mean well. I'm sure they do. This is just, it's something that has to do with knowledge and how we talk about dogs and how we understand their behavior.
Yeah, absolutely great talk. And should we move on to our next talk? So our very own Leti has presented her talk, which was on improving physical and mental health of dogs via motion. Absolutely wonderful talk. So Leti, if you want us to give a little summary.
Okay, so I wanted to show people the kind of things that we do as PDT trainers. I didn't want people, I wanted to give practical advice and show things, because many times, we talk about things and we don't put examples, and people don't know exactly what we are talking about, when they say, engage all their senses, but how can you do that? So it was just that kind of thing. And also show a bit the kind of work that I do with clients, with my own dogs, with the dogs in the shelter, and how people can help doing really, really, simple and things, and how you can achieve a great progress, for the dogs that are needing it most, especially in their welfare, because for me, the shelter dogs are very important, and I like being able to improve, even if it's a little bit, their lives. So yeah, I wanted it to be practical, and I think it was. So I'm happy with the way that it ended up.
It was absolutely practical for anyone who's working with dogs. I think everyone started thinking, I could include this in my private sessions. And also probably for dog carers to see some things they can implement at home. And absolutely for anyone working in rescue, the progress those dogs showed based on what you were doing with them is just beautiful to watch. So I loved it, absolutely.
Yeah, me too. I love the practical side of it.
Yeah, it was, I wasn't there for the shelter dogs. It was just, simple advice to the volunteers, and they were doing it because I couldn't be there because of the state of the dogs around other people. So I think is very, very simple things, big improvement. This is a win-win situation, really. Yeah, and also being able to teach just a small thing is this thing about sharing your knowledge that we mentioned before. For me, this is super important, because the knowledge is not mine. I've been lucky enough that it's been passed on to me, and I just want to share it so other people can achieve things in a really positive way for the people and for the dogs. So yeah, this was important as well.
Yeah, very nice. And I loved the practical side of it, but I also loved, you're saying big improvement, but you're also showing us that improvement is not based on our expectations, but based on the dog itself or the dog herself, their situation. And so the shelter dogs that Lazy's been working with, they've been terrified of other people. And for them, big improvement means just coming closer to people, being in close proximity to them. That was, knowing the story of those dogs and knowing what they've been through, just these kind of little things were already huge for them. So
Yeah.
I also loved how you, through your presentation, transmitted respect and understanding to dogs, and taking things in their own pace, not pushing our point of view on them. That was great.
And having
Yeah.
some fun.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it looked nice. Especially you had this one acrobat dog. One of them was very very
Kira.
interesting. Yeah. Going
Because-
through obstacles in interesting ways.
You know about her from the beginning because we shared her many months ago. But yeah, she is very interesting, and she's also the most scared of them.
Yeah. They all have their special talents. We just need to find them, I think.
Yeah.
Even the ones that you think, ugh, this dog is so terrified or whatever, they do have something special, everyone. Shall we move on to the last?
Yeah.
I think it's the last talk.
Yeah. Tanya. So Tatiana from Russia, she is a dog trainer, and she's been giving this big talk about the use of crates. So of course in PDTE we are not using crates to train our dogs. We only use them for transport and medical situations, but no, not related to training. And Tanya was actually explaining about how many people think that maybe this is the time to use a crate. For example, if dog has separation anxiety, but how actually there is how we need to look at the problem on a bigger scale and not just shut down the unwanted behavior, but really try to understand the dog and help the dog feel better and be able to cope. So crates just don't do that. And she was talking about multiple behavior problems and how we can deal with them without using the crates. I think it was great, another practical talk. And, really good one.
Yeah, really nice. And also, I think this is a little bit like the city study. We're starting to hear a lot about the use of crates. There is a new group that was created by Turin and Linda Rugas recently, and there's a lot of talk between the members about the use of crates, and there is about articles that people are writing. I know Amber has been writing about the use of crates as well. So it's great that this is coming out, that is people are talking about it, and that we can explain why it's not a good idea. I think it's brilliant.
We can give actual points instead of just saying no, don't do it.
Yeah, that's what I loved about it, because Tatiana, or Tanya, as she's usually called, she went through different scenarios where people might think that the crate would be a solution, and she showed in every one of these scenarios that not only it will not solve the problem, it will just add more problems. It's nice because it shows you that, okay, crates remove choice, and they're not teaching the dog anything about what else she could do, and they, if anything, encourage things like learned helplessness and stress and so on. So
lack of healthy movement, lack of proper sleep, inability to thermoregulate, and just so much things that are creating more stress and shutting down the behavior that we don't want to see, but what it does for the dog. Okay, we don't see the dog that's maybe destroying the house, but how does it make feel the dog.
And what happens when you open the crate?
Yeah.
Are you really solving anything? Not really. Yeah, so
Yeah,
that
great.
was it. This is the last talk of the PDTE conference 2021. I personally really hope that the next one can be done in person. I would like to travel again.
Maybe we can see. Maybe we can see each other's again.
That would be
Yeah.
great. But even if it's online only, I'm already looking forward to the next one. It's going to be organized by the Dutch members, and I'm sure it will be great.
Yeah.
There's information online if anyone's interested. You can check out the Pet Dog Trainers of Europe website for information on the association and this yearly conference. If you guys would like to listen to us some more, and not just us, but awesome, fantastic speakers, next weekend is the Dolce Vita Dog Symposium. It's a weekend seminar with speakers that are just fantastic. We have Tura Drugas speaking and Julia Robertson. We mentioned her today. Sindur Pangal, Marina Gates Fleming, and ourselves. So if anyone's interested, you can find more information at dolcevitadog.com. It's English with French translation in subtitles, but you don't have to. You can turn the subtitles off if you want.
Yeah,
this is something that I just wanted to mention if anyone was interested.
And you also you'll have recording for 2 weeks, which is great if you don't catch any of the talks live. And we also have a discount code for our community, which is, you can see here it on the screen, Smile English, written all together in capital letters. So you can use this code and check out and get a very nice discount from the price for the seminar.
Okay, so this was nice. All this recap, it's made me think about things that I had forgotten. So I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, and thank you everyone who joined in, who commented. We loved having you here with us. Thank you so much for joining and listening to us.
Okay,
See you soon.
bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.